Hey, so hello everyone. Welcome to SIG Autoscaling meeting. Today we seem to have a single topic on the agenda related to maximum number of nodes per zone in cluster autoscaler. Do we have anyone who proposed this topic?
Yeah, hi. Rahul and I are both here.
Hi.
Um,
Do you
yeah,
want
I can.
to describe the problem?
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So Rahul and I opened this issue hoping to figure out a way for the cluster autoscaler to be able to limit maximum number of nodes per zone. And one place where this might be helpful that we've experienced before is if, for example, there's IP exhaustion in a single zone. So currently the autoscaler has no way to be aware of that, and its behavior would be that it would continue to try scale up in that zone that's experiencing the IP exhaustion. And then as a result, this would bring like a buildup of not ready nodes. And so the autoscaler is aware of like a total maximum nodes, but not maximum number of nodes per zone. And so we are looking for feedback on a solution that we are proposing. And our solution is not limited to like specifically maximum number of nodes per zone, but maximum number of nodes like per some sort of node group label more generally, to hopefully be helpful for potential other use cases. And I'll talk like at a high level about our proposed solution. And then we also have like two PRs that we put together. And so in general, the idea behind our solution is to use the gRPC expander and allow for users to have like more granular filtering of the options via this expander. And the biggest change that would need to be made would be to include the similar node groups in the request to the gRPC expander. So that way the user's implementation would allow for filtering of not only just like the main option on the expander side, where they could filter based on maximum number of nodes per zone, for example, they would compute that in the gRPC expander and then only return options that wouldn't violate that maximum number of nodes per zone. But similarly, they also would need to be able to filter out the similar node groups so that when the autoscaler rebalances, it doesn't rebalance into node groups that have also reached their maximum number of nodes per zone. And so including the similar node groups in the gRPC expander option would allow the users to be able to do that. And then that's like what the first PR does. I forget which number it is on the doc, but they're both linked on the doc. Yeah, 6941 would be our like proposed implementation of that. And I guess like one thing to note is that the other expanders, for example, least waste, etc., already have access to similar node groups because the like expanders, like Cloud Provider option type, has access to the similar node groups. They're just not included in the gRPC proto requests. So we propose like adding that there. And then the second PR, I'll let Rahul talk about a little bit. That would be like the second part of our solution.
Yeah. So after we send that request to the expander and get our best option, currently the cluster autoscale will recompute similar node groups. Like it'll call the expander, get the best option, and then it recomputes similar node groups. But if we're doing filtering on the expander side, saying don't include these similar node groups, then our work basically gets erased and gets recomputed. So I added in PR 6926 optional flag. Like you can specify, I want to skip this recomputation for similar node groups. That way you can just trust that the expander is returning a good set of similar node groups. And it would be an opt-in flag. So by default, no behavior is changing, but if you opt into this flag, then you can skip the recomputation.
Cool. And then I guess like the last thing I'll mention before we can answer any questions or talk about feedback or anything. We explored like a solution of having this type of filtering directly in the autoscaler. But the solution was like a little bit more involved. We were trying to figure out a way where we would have to like track the maximum number of nodes per label, or per zone, but then specifically per label, and do this in a cloud provider agnostic way. So there's a little bit of a description of that like potential alternative solution in the issue as well. But our proposed solution would be the expander one that we just described. Cool. Yeah, happy to answer any questions or talk about anything.
Okay, so I think I have some questions, and I don't remember it off the top of my head, but and so I just want to ask basically if this is something you maybe tested or have thought about is we only use the similar node group logic if all the pods in the scale up can go to any zone. So if there is some reason why a pod would only be able to go to one zone, and this is, for example, if you're using a PV that's in a specific zone, just as one example, or some node affinity, pod affinity, like there is multiple reasons, then the entire logic is skipped. And I'm wondering where that logic is. Like does it happen before the expander? So you already have the list of node groups that's like similar node groups that's accounts for those pod requirements, or if it happens later on in the logic that you want to disable. I honestly don't remember, but like that would be something I would want to make sure is accounted for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Rahul, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the like similar node groups. Oh yeah, the similar node groups get computed once before the like options are sent to the expander, right? And so if the logic is to like do that filtering, I guess, is in the compute similar node groups function, then I think it would like already be included. But I'm also not positive like where that logic is.
Yeah, I'm trying to find this in code right now, but yeah, I think it's pre-computed, so that would be okay. So I was also kind of wondering, right, in terms of the use case itself. So the idea is to limit number of nodes in a zone across multiple different sort of node groups. I'm trying to understand why just basically capping the max size of node group doesn't solve this. And I assume it doesn't, but I just trying to understand why.
Well, we have like multiple node groups. So if like we have multiple node groups per zone. So even if you capped per node group, you could still go above the maximum for the zone.
I see. So this is a shared number for all the node groups across a zone.
Yeah, we want like a combined total rather than just like limited to one node group.
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, sort of, I need to read the code, but at a glance, what you're proposing makes a lot of sense. Like if other expanders have access to this information already, I don't think there should be a reason why gRPC shouldn't have access to it. And I think probably it doesn't, because historically, I believe we only computed. I think when gRPC expander was introduced, we only computed similar node groups after the expander made a decision and not before. And that was changed, and I think probably that was just not brought into gRPC expander. So I think it makes sense in general, but I'd need to read the PR. So I can take a look this week. I don't know if other people have other opinions or comments. I don't hear any, so I'm happy to take action item to look this week, and if I don't but again, like sort of on high level, what you explained makes a lot of sense. I just need to look at the code and see if there is any problems I can see, especially around handling those pods with zonal specific constraints. Yeah.
Well, and yeah, like the way we crafted our PRs, they would be useful beyond just our max nodes per zone thing, because it's basically just giving more power to the expander to decide on like similar node groups.
Yeah, definitely. I think doing it to gRPC seems very useful that way. So I'm quite happy about that. No, I think your proposal makes perfect sense, honestly. Again, I may have some like comments on the review on the details, but like, on the high level, that seems a very good idea.
Like Alex had a question, would max nodes per zone capability be limited to only when balanced similar node groups is on? Theoretically, it would still work without the balanced similar node groups, because if you were to pass in just one node group without any similar node groups, and that node group zone was full, you just not return that as part of your best options from the expander.
What happens if you have maybe 3 nodes left in a zone and get past expansion option with 5 nodes? Do you just cap it to 3 nodes, or do you reject it completely?
I guess that would be rejected. We'd see like, okay, there's only 3 zones. It wants to 3 nodes available. It wants to scale 5. We'd reject that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Obviously, it would be nice to be able to get up to 4, but I'd be like there is probably some edge cases where you could have pods with pod affinity where actually having 3 nodes out of 5 is not going to allow pods to schedule anyway. Though admittedly, those probably would require very special configuration to trigger.
But that actually
Makes
would end up being like an expander detail. Like you on the expander side would say like, I want to reject that. Or you could say, okay, that if there's 3 nodes, just that's fine. Give it as a best option. So
yeah,
it's a
absolutely.
expander implement.
All right. Do we have any other questions or comments related to this feature?
I guess just to clarify my question, so the balance similar node groups is a flag, right? It can be on or off. And it sounds like, I could be wrong, but it sounds like the current proposal depends on implementing it within the balance similar node group capability. So it would only apply to when balance similar node groups is on. Do I understand it correctly?
Because theoretically, right now, if you don't use balanced node groups, you already have the power to block if like a node group has reached its max number of nodes per zones. Like in the expander, you just don't return it. This would basically be like if you also use balanced similar node groups, then you can now have the power to do that. But with the way the cluster autoscaler is right now, you could theoretically use the expander to block a node group if it's reached its max nodes per zone.
Got it. So the problem only exists that the problem that you're trying to solve only exists when you're balancing the similar node groups.
Yeah,
Got it. Thank you.
No? Any other questions or comments? Okay, in that case, thank you. As I said, I'll take a look for the code review. Do we have any other topics? There is, I believe, nothing on the agenda, but maybe there is some other topic not listed in the agenda that someone would like to bring up.
If I could tag on. I have a PR that got a looks good to me like a few weeks ago, but I haven't heard back from any approvers. So I was wondering if I could have someone take a look at that.
Sure, sorry about this. Can you ping the link or put it in the agenda doc or like someplace I can easily find it?
Yeah, I just linked it.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
I think, Jack, you had something?
Yeah. But I think we can be talked in another meeting. Recently I used Proxmox as a VM provider, but I cannot but the CA cannot be used to autoscale the VM in Proxmox. So if someone submit a PR to support Proxmox, would it be accepted?
Sure. So in general, the answer is yes. We have a few requirements for implementing new providers, but we generally accept new cloud provider integrations. We have, I think, almost 30 by now. If I remember correctly, and there is a doc, I think it's called something like policy.md in cloud provider directory in cluster autoscaler repo. I maybe not getting the path exactly right, but it's along those lines. And I believe that two main requirements is that we don't want to introduce imports into the top level Go mod file of cluster autoscaler. So we don't want provider specific imports like clients and so on. So this needs to be solved within the provider implementation. And also we require that any cloud provider integration has a named owner because we as core maintainers are unable to handle all 30 providers. So basically the responsibility for maintaining the provider is on the owner of that provider and not on the owners of cluster autoscaler. And like for this model to work, we need someone to step up as the owner. So we only accept PR if it comes with a named person who is going to maintain it. I think those are the requirements.
Currently, I see all the cloud provider comes with some cloud from cloud, no on-premise solution like VM or VMware, VirtualBox or Proxmox. I don't find any local solution. I got your point. You mean if someone submit a PR to implement some on-premise solution, they have to keep it maintainable. Yeah.
So I didn't quite understand. Can you repeat?
So if it satisfies the policy requirement, it would be accepted, right?
Generally speaking, yes. And I think an implicit requirement is right that this is something that works in general for some sort of broader class of users. Like if it's one specific on-prem environment, then we probably wouldn't. But if it's something like, let's say, some sort of standard software for managing VMs that backs this up, let's say VMware, just as an example, that we would accept it. And I believe we have some providers that are tailored to on-prem use cases, like specifically the OpenStack one, I think is generally can be used on-prem as an example. So this is, in principle, something we can accept. Also, there is another solution which may be interesting, is the gRPC provider, which basically allows cloud provider integration without having to do the implementation in cluster autoscaler. Basically, there is a way to do this to a gRPC API. So you can have a separate component that exposes this API, and then basically cluster autoscaler will just call that and essentially use it as a proxy. So that's also a way. It's probably easier to do it that way. So it's also a, I think, option to consider.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other topics or questions?
I got a question on implementing the cloud provider particular function. Let me know if it's better taken on Slack, but we are in process of implementing has instance in the cloud provider interface in the Azure provider. And one of the proposals for implementing it was to use node group for node, the other cloud provider interface function as means of implementing has instance. And it seems on the surface that has instance almost can be implemented using node group for node, but something about it feels wrong. Like if one could reliably implement it, using this alternative cloud provider method, why would has instance be even needed? So we haven't yet thought through the semantics of those two and what the differences are. But I was wondering if it's something that, you could quickly pinpoint what makes node group for node unsuitable for judging, has instance.
I think that's a good question. I'm not sure. I think one thing that comes to my mind, but I am not at all sure, is just actually looking at comment. That's probably wrong. I was wondering if it's because maybe there is instance that is not managed by any node group, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So I'm not sure. I would need to check. Maybe we can have this discussion on Slack.
Sure. No worries. Thank you.
Okay. We have 3 minutes left. Does anyone have any other topic they'd like to bring? In that case, thank you, everyone. Have a good week, and let's see each other again in a week from now. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. See ya.
Thank you.
Bye bye.